So I am one of those speakers who really prefers to go first, so I'm jealous of both the Bens. And yeah, and I remember Shauna one time talking about she likes going later because she gets all warmed up watching the other people. And it just made me want to change all my notes. I was like, oh, that was good. That was good. I need to add that. That was really good. And so thank you guys. You know, when I was a kid, my dad always kept top of the line technology. So our cars had Bose speakers, and in our house we had really great stereo systems. And in fact, I recently realized why the tinny sound of my iPhone playing music drove me crazy. I'm like, I had all this good background and sound and what things are supposed to sound like, and I'm listening to my crappy phone play these things. So we recently invested in good speakers, Bose speakers, like I grew up with. And so, but we also had Betamax. Any other Betamax people in here? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you. I paid him to say that. So if you don't know, before VHS ruled the world, there was actually a war between Betamax and VHS. So the difference between the two, kind of in general, was Betamax was the better technology, but came in shorter format. VHS was more affordable, came in a longer format. You probably have deduced that VHS won that war, but you know, technology moved on, and the next thing took over. Does anyone know what that was? I see nodding heads. You got to yell it out. Try again. Oh, okay. I heard it from you. You win a prize. Come to me afterwards. I actually do have a prize for you. High definition laser disc. So if you missed the 5 minutes that these were the next technology, they look like DVDs except the size of records. So yeah, but then of course they were quickly eclipsed by DVDs, and now we stream, and I'm sure there'll be something else that Ben Chelf already knows about. They'll be taking that technology over. But so one thing, for me, it's always fun to think back on these different technologies. And this also, thinking about this, I was reminded, there was a time I had a Palm Pilot. Anyone else cool enough to have one of those? Yes, okay. MP3 player and the cell phone. So the iPhone actually was pretty amazing to me when it came out. Now it rules my life and trying to figure that out. But technology will always be the future. But it is something that is rarely lasting. Ben actually mentioned a number of things. My thing I was thinking about, the exception to this, was the printing press. Something's pretty much stuck with us. The nail and the brick. So there are things that last, but the amount, we can look in our own lives and see all the things that have come and gone with it. So I want to think about what is lasting, you know, and maybe this is something like me getting older, thinking about these things, but Brad and I will sometimes get in this conversation in relation to retirement. And so, you know, we're not sure if Social Security is going to be around for us. So, yeah, we're kind of paying into that. I think most of us are, right? So if it is around, I hope so, it definitely will not have a good return on our investment. And then there's the stock market-based retirement plans, which NPR informed me today that the majority of Americans don't have any stock. That was surprising to me. So the stock market-based plans, this feels good to me. You look at the track record, history, like it should be around for us. It should also have a pretty good return on our investment. But again, I have read history, so I happen to know that it has crashed in the past. There's no guarantees with this. And then I think, well, so what else? What's lasting? Well, my favorite kind of investment is real estate. Now, this is something that's lasting, right? It doesn't go poof into thin air, and it's tangible, and there's a limited amount. There's always going to be a demand for it. I'm thinking, this is good. This is a good investment. But again, history shows us that things can become unstable in your country and your government, and even that can be taken from you. So now that I've bummed us all out about our future, no guarantees, What is lasting? Well, you know what? It's our relationships that will have the most lasting and greatest payoff. I'd like to pretend that I came up with that wisdom bomb, but I didn't. I think most of us have heard some version of that. But I will say for me that this reality, I think, really hit home about 10 years ago. We were living in Florida at the time, and I was teaching a Bible study. Just to reinforce all stereotypes you have of Florida, all the people were in their 60s and 70s in this Bible study. And I have no idea why they were coming to a 20-something-year-old leading Bible study, but they did, and I learned a lot from them. See, these people had done really cool things. So they had interesting careers. They traveled the world. One had started churches. One had started a school that now sells curriculum worldwide. And of course, I wanted to hear about these things and learn about these things. But when their faces would light up? When they would talk about the people they'd poured their lives into. Their kids, their grandkids, their friends, their nieces, their nephews. So yeah, those amazing restaurants they got into, that was cool. That amazing political moment they were at, got to see eye to eye, that was cool. But honestly, those things had come and gone. But their relationships were the things that were going to last beyond them. So Brad and I, we talk about this, our relationships. Not just where we currently are with our kids, but where do we want these relationships to be when they're adults? What do we want that to look like? And so I can see where I want to be. I want to have kids who are adults, my kid adults, who are excited when we come to visit. I hope that when my kids need advice, we're some of the people that they call. I hope that when they have something that they're passionate about, they know we're the ones who will be excited with them. I have things that I hope for their character, and for who they are as people. I hope that being made in the image of a creative God, that they are using their creativity. I hope that they are self-controlled and disciplined. I hope that they're comfortable when they need to be alone. I hope that they are comfortable with people of very low status and people of the highest status. You can see I can go on and on, but I have a vision of what I hope for them. 2 Corinthians 4:18 says, "Fix your eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen. For what is seen is eternal, but what is unseen," sorry, let me get it again. "For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal." So Paul is talking to the Corinthians here. They're pressed in by all the pressures of their culture going on around them. These pressures are so counter to their faith. And yet Paul is telling them, don't get focused on these things. Focus on the things you can't even see yet. We have got to focus on the things we can't even see yet. So going back to my dad, he was a pilot in the Navy. So when it was time for me to learn to drive, I wasn't just learning to drive from an intense military officer. I was learning to drive from someone who'd had 20 years of resources poured into his technical training. Anyone else have tears when they're learning to drive? Yes. Thank you. I was not alone. Yes, there was definitely some tears. It was stressful. It was intense. But I will say I did learn some really good lessons for driving and honestly for life. The first principle I learned from him is you must keep your eyes down the road. There's this tendency in new drivers to want to look down right in front of them. But when you do that, you're missing what's coming up ahead. You won't have time to respond. To this day, my 13-year-old walking down the sidewalk will have his head down, and I will have to say, Carter, watch out for the old lady. Like he's going to mow someone down because his head is down. When our eyes are up, we can see what's out there and what's down here. When our eyes are down, we can only see what's right here. Okay, number 2, we have to regularly scan. Okay, so we're primarily focused down the road, but we also have to constantly be scanning the gauges, the mirrors, and all the cars around us. We're keeping tabs on where everything is and where everything might go. So when I see a deer up ahead, my kids are always with me, so I'm like, hey guys, a deer. And we think that's really cool. But I don't just I don't leave it there. So my eyes come back, I'm focused down the road, but my peripheral vision, I'm paying attention to that deer, 'cause I don't know. I don't know if it's gonna jump in front of me, but I'm gonna be ready to respond if it does. Okay, so by keeping our eyes down the road and regularly scanning, what we're trying to do is constantly anticipate potential hazards that will keep us from going where we want to go. So as we parent ourselves and honestly just parent our children, we've got to get our eyes fixed on where we are headed and where we are supposed to be going. But what is the unseen thing in life that you need to think about? Well, for us and for our children, it is the future and it is the intangibles. So yeah, I do want my kids to be able to have a career where they can provide for themselves and for their family. I want to be able to retire a certain way. But honestly, that's not the big thing that we're headed for. So for my kids, I think, will they know that they are created for a purpose greater than themselves? And will they live like that? Will they value things that are valuable? Will they love God? So as Brad and I parent, we try to keep our eyes focused on these things. And what we're trying to do is be ready. When the hazards pop up, we're ready to respond and make the corrective action that we need to make. Something that really helped us was we got to be a part of a pilot group for a book that Patrick Lencioni was getting ready to launch. And it is this book here. It is called The 3 Big Questions for a Frantic Family. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with him. He's done a bunch of bestsellers, and typically they're on business or teams. And the ones I've read have been in the form of a story. They're easy to get through. And this one takes you through the process of how to write a vision statement for your family. So after going through this process, this is the one that we came up with. We are an active family who are intentional and loving God and our neighbors. We value open time for family and for creativity. What do you think? Good? I got it. That's so good. Thank you. I do care a little bit like Ben does. So you know what? It's a great vision statement, but not for you. It's great for us. See, where God has you and your family is different than where he has the Keels. And so I'm going to give you, but I will say this vision statement has really helped provide a filter through which we make all of our family decisions through. And we actually have not changed it. I thought we would change it at some point. Maybe we will, but at this point, it's been good for all these years. But I'll give you an example. So if we have an opportunity to do something we're excited about, it's going to be a commitment that keeps us out of the home so much that we can't spend time with our neighbors, we're going to have to make a decision, either to not step into that opportunity, or we're going to have to make a decision to get rid of something else. Because sharing life with our neighbors is part of our vision statement, part of what we feel called to. So this is where boundaries come in. They're another thing that had to be specific and personal to you and your situation. Who you are and where God has you is going to be different than the Keels. So I'm going to give you some examples of boundaries that people set up with technology. Now, I know some people who have this really great rule of not being on any devices when they're around their kids. They're like, I do that at work. I'll do that after they go to bed. But when I'm with my kids, I'm fully present. I love this boundary. I wish I could make it a universal rule that we all have this boundary. Except that as a homeschool mom, I'm pretty much with my kids all the time. And that would mean I would never text anyone back or email anyone back. So for our family, it just wouldn't work. So it's a great boundary, but it's not great for everyone. On the flip side, I will say one area I think relative to the culture around us we're pretty strict on is we only allow 1 hour a week on the iPad while our kids are young. And to clarify, my kids are 13, 11, and 10. This is still the rule. It does not make my life easier. My kids need less from me when they are on a device. And so this is a hard boundary for us. But part of our vision for our family is creativity. And you need open space and time for that. And so even boredom is a helpful agent for creativity. And so is this a great boundary? For us, yes. But for some of you, you're gamers. You want to share that with your kids. And there's nothing wrong with that. So it's a great boundary for some people, but it's not going to be great for everyone. Some people have music playing all the time. They love music. But there are people who really value being musical, right? So they actually are going to really limit how much music is playing, have musical instruments easy to access, because they want to focus their energy on being musical rather than just consuming the music that they're listening to. So again, it's a great boundary, but it's not going to be great for everyone. Ultimately, good boundaries make it easier to do what you want to do and more difficult to do what you don't want to do. So here's an example. For me, it's really easy to, at the end of the day, I want to zone out and I want to watch a show every night before I go to bed. It's just a really easy pattern for me. There's actually nothing inherently wrong with that. But I started thinking about this recently. I thought, I don't know that cumulatively over the years, that's what I want to look back on. And so I recently put a boundary on myself that the laptop doesn't come into the bedroom with me at night. So it's not right or wrong. It's just making it easier for me to do what I want to do and more difficult to do what I don't want to do. So the people who don't email, text, or use social media around their kids, they're just setting a boundary that makes it easier for them to produce a strong relationship with their kids rather than passively consume technology. By not allowing more than an hour a week on the iPad, we're making it easier for our kids to choose creativity rather than just consume entertainment. By having musical instruments around and limiting music played over speaker, some people are making it easier to choose to be a producer of music rather than just a consumer of music. Again, none of these boundaries are good in and of themselves. They are only helpful if they are helping you get to the destination that you're going. You see, we put these boundaries in our lives to ensure that we get to the destination that God has for us. So sometimes you are going to see a hazard coming up in the road, and you know, I'm going to have to take a completely different route to get to where I was going. Other times you see a hazard coming up, and you know, I just have to change lanes. Small adjustment. But as technology keeps changing, you and your family will have to keep adjusting. You are not in a self-driving car. This is your life that God has entrusted you with. This is your family that God has entrusted you with. It is your job to keep your eyes down the road and keep scanning for potential hazards. All right. I actually typically give really practical talks. And so today I hung out up here because I think you cannot make any useful technology decisions if you don't know where you're headed. But I will tell you 2 tools that have been very, very helpful for our family. This one I already referenced. Lencioni helps you answer the questions, where are you going? And what do you need to fix your eyes on? And then the TechWise family, I think, Will, you've talked about it, helps you answer the questions, what boundaries do we need to set as a family to make it easier to do what we want to do and more difficult to do what we don't want to do? Now, I will say both of these have family in the title, but I will say married, single, with or without kids. I really think every person in this room should engage with both of these books. We will always have technology in our lives, and this is neither good nor bad. It's a tool. It's how do we use the tool? But we must remember to use it. See, this is where I want to change based on what you said. Yes, we must remember to use it as a tool to create and to love, right? So good, such a good lens. To help us get where we're going, rather than allowing it to become a hazard that will keep ourselves or our children from getting where they're supposed to go.